Welcome back, folks, to another edition of #AskGSM, the weekly Monday mailbag video where I answer your questions from Facebook and Twitter right here in this video form. Of course, we are only less than 24 hours removed from the historic, monumental WrestleMania 30 pay-per-view event. And there's so many emotions running through me and the entire WWE universe right now. We saw the return of the legends and Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock and Hulk Hogan all in the same ring together at the same time. We had the streak ended by Brock Lesnar, and I'll get into that. And I'll just get into that in just a few more moments. We had a new champion crowned in the main event in the form of Daniel Bryan after going through Triple H, Batista, and Randy Orton all in the same night. There's so many historic happenings on last night's show. There's so much to say on WrestleMania. I got a few questions about it, of course, and I will be doing my full review of the show. You can read that on nexteraWrestling.weebly.com. That will probably be up on Bleacher Report as well. My immediate reaction to the pay-per-view, I tweeted all of last night, so you can check it out on my Twitter page, on Facebook. All of my, I wrote a post last night with my immediate reaction to the show, so you can check that out there as well. But nevertheless, let's get into this week's questions. The first question comes from Jared J from Facebook. Should there be an ECW wing of the WWE Hall of Fame, and who should be inducted into it? No, I don't think there should be an ECW wing, if only because if you do an ECW wing, then you would have to incorporate a WCW ring or a WCW wing, an NWA wing, and all these different kind of companies. So they already do have some ECW guys like a Terry Funk and the Funk Brothers are already in the WWE Hall of Fame. And if there was to be an ECW wing, I would definitely induct guys like Tommy Dreamer, the Sandman, Raven, Sabu, Shane Douglas. I think a lot of these people can be inducted and will be inducted into the WWE over time. There's been a lot of people in the WWE Hall of Fame who have never competed in the WWE, and I'm not talking about celebrities, but guys like the Abdullah the Butcher has never competed in WWE, yet is still in the Hall of Fame. So I think in due time, and a lot of these guys like Dreamer, like Sabu, like Sandman, have all had stints in the WWE at one point or another, so they will be inducted into the Hall of Fame at some point in time. But no, I don't think there should be an ECW wing into the WWE Hall of Fame, but an interesting concept nonetheless. Next question comes from Ross S. What's your reaction on WrestleMania? So like I said, I can't get into my full thoughts here. I'd be ranting for a half an hour. Not ranting, but I'd be talking about the show for a half an hour. And like I said, I'll be writing my full review on it just shortly, so you can check it up on my website, nexteraWrestling.weebly.com. But my immediate reaction to WrestleMania as a whole, an amazing event. I thought the first hour, including the pre-show too, which I thought was really, really good. The first hour, hour and a half, I think was probably the best hour and a half of WrestleMania, or the first best hour and a half of WrestleMania in history, if not of any WWE pay-per-view ever. I thought that was phenomenal. On the opening segment, Bryan versus Triple H, Cesaro winning the Battle Royal. There's so many great stuff happening in the first hour and a half of that show. We had history made with the streak being broken at the hands of Brock Lesnar after Undertaker took his first loss at WrestleMania ever. We had Daniel Bryan defeat both Triple H, like I said, and all three members of Evolution, Batista, Randy Orton, and Triple H, all in the same match to win the WWE World Heavyweight Championship, and a phenomenal moment to close out the show. So overall, I thought it was a tremendous event. I wouldn't say it was the greatest WrestleMania ever, because it wasn't perfect, of course. I hate to see The Undertaker lose, but it creates a lot more buzz going into Monday Night's Raw tonight. The post-WrestleMania Raw is always amazing, and I expect tonight to be no different. But had The Undertaker won, I mean, sure, it would have gone on to 22, but it wouldn't have created any buzz at all, you know what I mean? I would not go in tonight's Raw looking forward to what the aftermath of that match would be at all. And the match wasn't even all that great anyway. It was good, but it wasn't as great as I expected it to be. I guess I just had my hopes too high. But even still, though, I think overall it was one of the best WrestleManias in history. Easily the best WrestleMania in the last decade. That award that WrestleMania was definitely WrestleMania 28 a couple years ago. For the last 2 years, it has been WrestleMania 28. However, in my opinion, I would definitely have to be WrestleMania 30. For the 30th anniversary, unlike WrestleMania 25, it succeeded in being a tremendous event, feeling like a grandiose event, culminating storylines, starting new ones. The only real complaint I have coming out of the show, and not the streak, but just John Cena being Bray Wyatt, the match wasn't all that great. And then you have John Cena go over Bray Wyatt. I mean, Bray Wyatt was made to look so strong before the show. I don't think Bray Wyatt is dead after the show, but it's something that can be fixed, but that was a bit of a disappointment. But aside from that, though, WrestleMania overall was phenomenal. Just a tremendous event overall. And on a side note, too, watching the WWE Network, watching WrestleMania on the WWE Network was a great experience. I had very few flaws with it early on with the pre-show, but aside from that, with some audio issues. But aside from that, the broadcast itself, it was lagging a bit for the Triple H Bryan match, and I missed a few spots there. But aside from that, though, for the rest of the night, it worked perfectly, which is very surprising. So that was phenomenal as well. Andre G, your thoughts on 21-1? Like I said before, I'll be getting to this. I'll probably be writing a blog on this or a post on Facebook or something. So be on the lookout for that. But I'm of two heads on this. On one hand, it creates a tremendous amount of buzz going to Monday Night's Raw tonight, especially with the potential signing of Sting appearing on Raw tonight and challenging Undertaker to a match at WrestleMania 31. Undertaker saying that I've done it all. I really have nothing left to do. The streak is broken. I will now retire. Out comes Sting, points his bat at WrestleMania sign. Bam, WrestleMania 31 next year. So I could see that happening. I would love to see that happen. I think Undertaker is pretty much done. If he's going to have one more match, it should be against Sting or John Cena. But with the streak being broken, there's really no point at this point. And I'm a bit disappointed about that. But so that's the positive side. On the negative side, I just don't see why it was Brock Lesnar. For one thing, this had the worst build of any match on the card as far as the main event matches go. No one expected Brock Lesnar to win, so that's why it made for such a great moment. The facial reactions were priceless because it was probably the biggest upset in WrestleMania history, the biggest shocker in WrestleMania history, and one of the biggest shockers in WWE history as a whole. But that being said, though, I just don't understand why it was Brock Lesnar. I guess it makes him one of the greatest of all time. I noted on my Twitter page that he's won the WWE, UFC, and amateur wrestling titles. He is the youngest WWE champion in history and now has broken the streak. So there's really no one right now with more heat in WWE than Brock Lesnar. So, and he's a part-timer, and I think he signed up till WrestleMania 31. But if he doesn't sign past that, then what was the point of putting in Brock Lesnar? Having Brock Lesnar be the guy to end the streak. I just don't see why it couldn't have been a guy like Bray Wyatt or Roman Reigns or Cesaro. I don't think Cesaro, but you know what I mean, though. Like a young guy that can benefit from it and forever say, I was the one in 21-1. Like CM Punk, from last year. If anyone was going to end it, in recent years, if not Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 25 or 26, then most definitely CM Punk from last year. I think he could have benefited from it. 20-1 would have been better than 21-1. I thought that was a bit weird. But like I said, though, the match was probably Undertaker's worst in recent WrestleMania history because his matches with Punk, Triple H, and Michaels all surpassed this one by far, and the build-up sucked. So had this rivalry been built up better, maybe I would have felt better about the streak ending, but it wasn't, so I was a bit disappointed by that. But we'll see. And ask me again in a week or so after we possibly see Sting on Raw. Maybe I'll be a little bit more optimistic about it. But as of right now, I thought it made for a great moment, and it ended one era of Undertaker streak at WrestleMania and then began another with Daniel Bryan winning the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. So I thought that was great. Paul S., his question was, will we finally see Sting in WWE, and do you firmly believe that Punk will still return to the company after a few months hiatus? So like I just said with Sting, I do see him coming to WWE. I'm hell-bent. I'm determined on seeing him in WWE tonight on Monday Night Raw. If you're watching this later in the week, let me know. Obviously, you probably already know by this point. But even still, as they record this, it has yet to be confirmed. Sting has did some Q&A over the weekend and said that 31 is his new favorite number. Crowds did a massive yes chant. It was awesome. It's on YouTube. You can check it out. But even still, though, I very well think that Sting will be in WWE as of tonight on Monday Night Raw. So I look forward to it. And hopefully we get Sting versus Taker at WrestleMania 31, Undertaker's final matchup. And as far as the second part of your question goes, do I firmly believe that Punk will still return to the company after a few months hiatus? I never said a few months hiatus. I did say that CM Punk will be back in the WWE, and I'm still very positive that he will be back in WWE at some point. It might not be tonight on Raw. Maybe it won't be next week or next month. But I do think he will be in WWE at some time. Time heals all wounds, so he will be back in WWE at some point. Will it be in the next few months? Maybe, maybe not. Probably not. We'll have to wait and see. I said going into WrestleMania, I did not see CM Punk returning at any point before WrestleMania. If it wasn't going to be on the Raw in Chicago a month ago, then it certainly wouldn't be any time before WrestleMania. And it didn't happen at WrestleMania. I didn't expect it to happen at WrestleMania. So I wasn't disappointed that it didn't show up. But yes, I do expect CM Punk to be back in WWE at some point. It just may not necessarily be in the next few months. Jamie P., her question was, what's your view on people like Batista and Lesnar walking in whenever they want and breaking a streak or winning a title? It kind of irritates me. This is the view of many people, and I can definitely understand why, but it's all about the money. Like when The Rock won the WWE Championship, it was all about pay-per-view buy rates, boosting ratings for Raw, people tuning in to see The Rock as champion, all that kind of stuff. So I can see why they would put titles on people like Batista, like Brock Lesnar, like The Rock. But the difference between Brock Lesnar and Batista and Brock Lesnar ending the streak is that Brock Lesnar only appears on Raw and WWE programming only a few times a year. You know what I mean? Because if only because he has signed a certain amount of dates, he has limited appearances. He won't be appearing on Raw every single week. Batista, on the other hand, does. He does house shows, he does Raws, he does SmackDowns every single week. So putting a title on him is better than putting it on someone like a Brock Lesnar or an Undertaker or a Rock, who are on the show every single week because they have other obligations. You know what I mean? So it irritates me more. I mean, Brock Lesnar at this point, you have to put the fucking title on him. If you don't, then it makes zero sense because he just ended the streak. He accomplished the biggest thing there is to accomplish in pro wrestling by ending the streak. So if he doesn't get a shot at the WWE Championship, then it makes absolutely no sense. So as far as breaking the streak or winning a title, like I said before, I didn't think that Lesnar should have been the guy to break the streak. Someone like a Wyatt or a Cesaro, or even someone like Shawn Michaels from a couple years ago, or even CM Punk would have been better than Brock Lesnar, because he could very well be gone out of WWE by next year, because I know that he only signed up until WrestleMania 31. So time will tell to see if he resigns, and hopefully he will, because if he doesn't, it's the stupidest decision ever to have him be the one to break the streak. Now on time for the Twitter questions. At JJF Tweets asks, how would you book a Rob Van Dam heel turn? I was dying for an RVD heel turn over TNA. That was at the point when he was extremely stagnant. But when he came back to WWE, I was a bit more lenient with it because he was still very over. And he still is over. I was surprised not to see him at WrestleMania last night or any surprise entries in that Battle Royal. But even still, though, he might be on tonight's Raw. We'll have to wait and see. But even still, I think he still has more. He still has more potential to go as a babyface. I don't think there's any real need to turn him heel anytime soon, if at all, during his WWE tenure. But if you're going to turn him heel, you got to put him with Paul Heyman. It's the only way I see him turning heel. I mean, there's other ways, obviously, he can turn heel, but that is the most logical way to turn RVD heel, given his history with Heyman, their thing from ECW in 06, from the original ECW. Just so much history there. So if you're going to turn RVD heel, just put him with Paul Heyman. He has a mouthpiece in Heyman. RVD isn't the best mic worker. We all know that. So putting him with Heyman makes the most sense. It would be a perfect combo for RVD and Heyman as a heel duo. His second question was favorite streak memory. Don't you dare say WrestleMania 30. That was pretty funny. That made me laugh when you tweeted that to me last night. But favorite streak memory, only been watching since April 2008. So going up to that point would definitely have to be, I don't know, either Taker versus Triple H or Taker versus Michaels. Probably Taker versus Michaels, because I remember reading the live coverage of that match. I didn't watch that WrestleMania as it happened. It was a phenomenal match and one of the best WrestleMania matches in history. But just reading the live coverage of that match, I remember spitting out my hot chocolate, I think it was, when I was drinking it while I was reading this, when Undertaker kicked out of the Sweet Chin Music, and I was shocked out of my mind that happened. So I would have to say that was my favorite moment as far as the streak goes, my favorite streak match from Undertaker at WrestleMania. At Chris Krieger, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, your question was, who's on your personal Mount Rushmore of hottest wrestling women? Obviously, this is very subjective, but in my personal opinion, Maurice is definitely up there. Trish Stratus, Eve would have to be up there too. Who else? Probably Lita. So those four women, there's probably a lot more that don't come to mind at the moment, but Trish Stratus, Maurice, Eve, and Lita. At Ambrose311, his question was, what do you think the future holds for future WrestleManias? Kind of a broad question. I don't know exactly what you mean about that, but it's in terms of cities and whatnot, or expectations for future WrestleManias. Because last night's WrestleMania was so great, in that it's going to be hard for future WrestleManias to surpass it. But I do expect WrestleMania to continue to get bigger and better as time goes on. It's such a great WrestleMania last night, so hopefully they can only improve from this point forward. And WrestleMania is always one of the biggest nights of the year, one of the biggest days, weekends, months of the year. I'm just anticipating WrestleMania, and it's always the Super Bowl of wrestling. So WrestleMania will only continue to get bigger and better in years ahead. At no ODBS allowed, his question was, do you think it was smart for Brock Lesnar to end the streak? I already kind of answered this question, but to end the streak, was it smart? The aftermath will kind of tell whether it was smart or not. We're only less than a day removed from the show, so it's really hard to say right now. And whether they have Sting come back or Sting come to the WWE and do a match with Taker at next year's WrestleMania. But was it smart for Brock Lesnar? No. It's logical that a guy like Lesnar could end the streak, given the fact that he's a beast and has destroyed almost everybody in the WWE. So I could see that. So that makes sense, rather than someone like maybe a Ryback or whatever. Someone I don't see a Ryback ending the streak. You know what I mean? He's kind of like a joke at the moment. So because I know that was rumored at one point last year. So it makes sense in terms like from a storyline standpoint. And if you look at Brock Lesnar, you could say to yourself, that is a guy that could beat The Undertaker at WrestleMania. But for Brock Lesnar, does he really benefit from this at all? I don't think so, especially if he's only going to be in the WWE for a few more years and with limited appearances at that. So it doesn't make much sense to me that Brock Lesnar was the guy. I don't know if Undertaker chose him personally, because I know this match has been in the works for a couple of years now, or whether it was just his opponent of the year and they wanted this year to be his last, and Brock Lesnar just so happened to be facing Undertaker this year. I don't really know. But I don't think it was smart for Brock Lesnar to be the guy. Was it smart to end the streak? I don't think so personally. Like I said, it made for a tremendous moment, but I would like to see the streak continue on, go undefeated forever. But that's my personal opinion. But even still, Brock Lesnar being the guy, no, I don't think that was smart at all. At X CM Punk X, I'm sorry, I completely botched that. At X CM Punk Fan X, his question was, your thoughts on how the streak ended? Just like I said, the match itself sucked. The build-up sucked. The match didn't suck. It was a good matchup, but the build-up and just the emotion, the commentary was terrible. People weren't really into the matchup because they didn't think Undertaker would lose. The moment was priceless, overshadowed the match by far, especially when they showed the reaction of that guy that I think his shirt said, just say yes. Just that black guy in the front row, just his facial expression was priceless. I was cracking up at that for at least 5 minutes, and I still laugh at that every time I see it. But even still, though, my thoughts on how the streak ended, I've already said this a number of times already. But I don't know. I just thought it wasn't anticlimactic, but just the way they built up to it, I thought could have been better. So it felt bigger because this streak or the build up after this matchup, the match itself, the feud, it's all felt lax over the last month and a half. So I think that could have been done better to make the ending of the streak make more sense and feel more climactic at WrestleMania. At Little Reynolds asks, will the Divas division ever be the way it was when Trish, Lita, Victoria, etc. were there, and can it be revived? Will it ever be the same? Never say never, I guess. I guess there's always the chance, but the women's wrestling in WWE has been underappreciated, has been booked terribly for the last maybe 5-6 years now, that it's hard to imagine a Divas division actually worth watching. AJ's been doing a tremendous job. We have other very good workers in the division at the moment, but just the way they're portrayed, and I mean the whole Total Divas thing kind of gets them a little bit more time on TV and gets them more exposure and whatnot, but it really hasn't done much for the Divas division itself or the title. I mean, AJ's done, like I said, a tremendous job of actually bringing some prestige to that championship over the last 9-10 months. And the Divas division itself, though, has really not changed at all in the last few years. So will it ever be the same like when it was when Trish, Lita, and Victoria were around? Those were the golden years for the women's wrestling era, for the women's division. I don't think it will ever be like that again. Like I said, never say never. It's always possible. And can it be revived? At this point, it can be revived. It's just so difficult because not a lot of people care about women's wrestling. You just need all the right players and right storylines and right booking and longer matches and stuff of that nature. And I just don't know if WWE cares enough in order to execute it like that. And the final question comes from at Maham Ahmad9 or Ahmad. I'm sorry, I completely botched that. His question was it a mistake for CM Punk to not return at WrestleMania? Like I said before, I did not expect CM Punk to be back at WrestleMania, so I wasn't disappointed that he wasn't back. And it would have been overshadowed anyway. It was WrestleMania 30. We had the streak broken. Daniel Bryan winning the championship. The returns of The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin. So did we really need CM Punk back in WWE on this show? You know what I mean? I just don't really see that it was necessary for him to be back in WWE on this show. And it would have been overshadowed anyway. I didn't see him coming back and screwing over Bryan and turning heel. That was a stupid idea from the start. And whoever started that rumor was dumb, I think. I don't think it was. It's not the worst idea. It would have been awesome. But just the chances of that happening with WrestleMania going off with CM Punk turning heel on Daniel Bryan instead of giving him his big moment that we got last night would have been asinine. So I'm glad he didn't return because he would have been overshadowed anyway. And I don't think he will return anytime soon. I don't think it was a mistake that he didn't return. It's not WWE's fault. It's CM Punk's decision to come back. If he wants to come back, he'll come back. You know what I mean? So it wasn't a mistake to not bring him back because CM Punk, it's up to him. So he would have been back by now. If he wanted to come back at WrestleMania, he would have. And the rumor of him being stunned by Stone Cold Steve Austin at WrestleMania, and that was a planned finish to the show, that was a load of bullshit too. I don't believe that in the slightest. It would have been cool, but I don't believe that it was supposed to happen. But even still, though, that is this week's hashtag AskGSM video. If you want to send in a question, make sure to like my official Facebook page at GrahamGSMMatthews, draw my comment on the wall, or tweet me on Twitter at WrestleRants with the hashtag AskGSM. You can also leave a comment below with your question, and it will be included in next week's video. Thanks for watching, guys. Really do appreciate it. Make sure to enjoy the Raw after WrestleMania. If you're watching this video later on in the week, enjoy the rest of your week. And this is GSM signing out. Till next week, guys.